He's here with us. The takedown on SI, Rick Ucchino in the house.
What up?
What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? Been a while since we've talked. I think it was WrestleMania 37 last time we actually had like a conversation with one another, like other than through DM on X. How's it going?
Oh, doing well, pal. Doing well. Thank you so much for making some time. People just asking me what's on tonight. I'm like, hey, man, there's always wrestling on. So, I mean, you can never turn that down when you have Monday Night Raw, you have NXT, you have Dynamite, you have TNA, you have SmackDown. I like how they've like worked together to make sure that they don't mash it up, because there was an issue with AEW and NXT for a while, but just, let cooler heads prevail. Let's give everybody a chance to have their product on each night. We'll get into the wrestling talk in a little bit. I wanted to have you on today to talk some Bengals to start, because T. Higgins is obviously a big topic of conversation, whether he's going to remain with Cincinnati. I got friends in New England like, oh, he's coming here. Other parts of the country like, oh yeah, T. Higgins, come here, be our one. But it seems like Cincinnati's looking at this going, bro, we need as many good players as we can get to try to overtake all of these teams in front of us there in the AFC to try to beat a guy like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. Take us through this situation, and do you think they'll come to a deal, whether it's through the tag or not, to get T. Higgins back there with the Bengals?
Yeah, I think there's 31 other teams out there and fan bases of 31 other teams who are very upset by yesterday's news broken by my buddy James Rapine for Sports Illustrated, Cincinnati Bengals talk under the SI umbrella. The Bengals are going to tag T. Higgins, unless, according to James Rapine, unless they don't get a deal done before the deadline, right? So I think they have until March 4th to place the franchise tag on him. So they are going to work over the next few weeks to try to get a long-term contract extension done with him. If it doesn't get done by March 4th, they will tag him. So they have until July to get that deal done, because the last thing they want is T. Higgins to hit the open market. The last thing Joe Burrow wants is for him to hit the free agent market, because if they do that, he's gone. He is by far the best free agent, or soon to be free agent, available in this year's class. So he's going to have a lot of wide receiver needy teams like New England, teams like Washington, who are going to be bidding top dollar, maybe beyond what he might be worth, maybe beyond what the Bengals might be willing to pay. But the bottom line comes down to the fact that T. Higgins wants to be in Cincinnati. I know that's difficult for some people to understand or hear, but he wants to be here. And that was put in motion when he changed agents in the middle of this past season. David Mulugeta was his former agent, has never completed a second contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. That is not a good working relationship. Same agent that Jesse Bates has. And we all know how the Jesse Bates saga ended. He's now playing all-pro ball in Atlanta instead of here in the Queen City. So T. Higgins changed agents, went with Jamar Chase's agent, and all of a sudden we start hearing Joe Burrow be very vocal about, well, T's a need. I expect him to be back. I want him back. Putting a lot of pressure on the front office, but also a lot of pressure on the players to say, yeah, let's figure out how to get this done. How to pay T. Higgins, how to extend Jamar Chase, how to extend Trey Hendrickson. $5 million over how many ever years are left on that deal. And honestly, it shouldn't be that hard, Jay. It really shouldn't be that hard, because they aren't paying anybody else. They don't have a whole lot of money invested in a lot of their players right now, outside of Orlando Brown Jr. So they should be able to extend all three of those guys this offseason, especially with all three guys wanting to be here and wanting to keep the band together, because, like, there is potential for this team to turn it around quickly if they are able to keep all of those guys and then use some of their other money, which they would still have left over, to plug some other holes. And hopefully they draft a little bit better as well. That's the plan heading into this offseason.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Trey Hendrickson, because the Bucs definitely need an outside pass rusher. They need a guy, and people have been talking about Myles Garrett and Max Crosby, and Trey Hendrickson is another guy that people have been asking about, all right, well, what's his future going to look like? We saw him down here with New Orleans, and all he did was go to Cincinnati and just continue to do great with no sleeves, and it just he stands out. He's just an incredible football player, man. I mean, is there a chance that he gets moved? My Bucs fans want to know, is there any chance Trey Hendrickson is not playing for Cincinnati next season?
I would say Yes, and these are sentiments that I'm going to echo again from my buddy James Rapine for Cincinnati Bengals Talk. It all depends on what Trey wants. Because if Trey Hendrickson, who, yes, just did lead the league in sacks, first Bengals player ever to be the sack king for a season, he does a lot well. But he is not quite the disruptor, a player of the caliber of a TJ Watt, of a Myles Garrett. If he is going to want their kind of dollar, top end defensive end dollar, I don't know if the Bengals are going to pay somewhere in the $30 million range a year for Trey Hendrickson, especially with him now being on the wrong side of 30, which is something they're very much the Leonardo DiCaprio of the NFL. Like once you hit a certain age, it's like cutoff point, except for very few exceptions, right? So, but Trey is one of those exceptions. So if he can work it out with the team where he's getting somewhere in the 27, 24, 25, 26, 27 range, maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, I think they'll jump at that and they'll do that. If he wants to go above 30, that's where things might tend to get a little bit dicey. But I would not surprise me to see him get, because he still has 1 year left on his deal, right? So maybe 2 years front end with a huge signing bonus because he has earned a raise and the front office wants to give him that. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a 2-year contract extension somewhere. But there is definitely a chance. It just all depends on how much money he wants.
So what else do the Bengals need to do, Rick? Because you look at this team and they're looking around and looking at Kansas City, looking at Buffalo, who people thought, oh man, no Diggs. There are all these injuries on defense, and then they go all the way to the champion. They go and make their move to try to beat Kansas City. Unfortunately for them, they lost in the championship game. Obviously, we got Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Who knows who else is going to pop up next year? I mean, we're getting farther and farther away. I love Joe Burrow. I love the way he plays. But we're getting farther and farther away from that Super Bowl appearance from a couple of years ago. What are the biggest holes that they do have to fill if they want to get back to be amongst the elite there in the conference and try to make another deep run in the postseason?
Look, the Eagles gave you the blueprint, right? Because they're paying their stars, they're paying their quarterback, their top 2 receivers. Oh yeah, they have Saquon Barkley under contract as well, and yet they can still block and they can get after the pass rusher, right? So in the trenches, that's where the Bengals lost a lot of their games this year, and it starts at the guard position. Honestly, on offensive line, Alex Kappa, who's a guy that they the year after they went to the Super Bowl, right, with that god awful offensive line, the first literal second of tampering, Adam Schefter is like, boom, 4 years, $64 million. Alex Kappa, somebody you're very familiar with. Come on up I-75. You're in Cincinnati. Unfortunately, whether it's due to injuries or age or whatever, his play has fallen off drastically. The Bengals got beat a lot inside, and it was either Cordell Volson's fault or Cody Ford's fault or Alex Kappa's fault. They're good with Ted Karras at center. Obviously, Orlando Brown Jr. left tackle. They're paying him a lot of money. He did have some injury problems this year, which is unlike him. And they really like Amarius Mims, the big right tackle they got out of Georgia. So they're good on the edges. They're good in the middle. They have to find some value at guard. They have to find some free agents at guard who can be serviceable. Because if they're serviceable, Joe Burrow's going to pick them apart. Chase Brown's going to pick you guys apart. They're going to put up 30 points a game, especially if they keep Chase and Higgins. But they got to find a way to apply more pressure on the quarterback, because outside of Trey Hendrickson, they got nothing. One guy who will be interesting to keep an eye on is Joseph Osai. Took him a while to recover from that. But when Sam Hubbard got hurt last year and went out, all of a sudden the pass rush started picking up because Joseph Osai was playing more on the left side. He is now a free agent. It wouldn't be surprising to me to see somebody look at the tape for his last 5-6 games this year and go, okay, that's a guy who's worth investing in, and maybe give him a 2 or 3 year kind of prove it deal kind of thing. But Cincinnati should be looking to bring him back and try to find a way to get more pass rush, whether that's invest high draft capital in that or some of your other free agency dollars. But it absolutely starts in the trenches for this team.
How is the buzz right now for the Reds as we get closer? I mean, new manager. I mean, you have Elly de la Cruz, who's a clear stud on the squad. Is there optimism there in Cincinnati? I was actually watching the Pete Rose documentary on my flight a couple of days ago. It was really, really good. Yeah, what's it like for the Reds right now? I know it's been a while since they've been kind of a consistent contender, but I watched a couple of games last year, and I said, man, there's some talent here if they can put this thing together, if they can pitch a little bit, and now they have a Hall of Fame manager, I think they might sneak up on some people there in the NL Central.
Yeah, I think Terry Francona coming in is, man, it could be one of the sneaky best offseason moves for anybody, for any team. I know there are people who will look at the managerial position and go, oh, well, they don't really affect the outcome of games. It's kind of maybe overrated whether or not they win or lose based off of the manager. But where this team really is going to excel, I think, and improve under Terry Francona is just they were not they didn't have their fundamentals under them last year. Yes, young and talented, but they played young and stupid, honestly, a lot last year. And I think if Terry Francona, especially with Elly De La Cruz, who was a 6-WAR player at age 22 last year, finished 8th in the MVP voting, Jesus, in the NL Central and National League last year, and still wasn't a finished product. Like, still a lot of rough edges that need to be smoothed out there. If he can harness him and get him to focus all the time, get him to play with effort all the time, and really hold him kind of accountable. Like, accountability was a big word in Cincinnati last year, because it's like somebody would screw up and then David Bell would just be like, oh, well, be ho-hum about it. And Terry Francona's not that guy, right? He's going to hold people's feet to the fire, and he's going to get this team, focused and get their fundamentals right. And I think that's really going to help, because this was a team that lost a lot of close games last year. And it was always like one dumb play, like one error in the field, or a runner getting thrown out at home, or a runner getting thrown out at third, or a base running blunder somewhere, or it was always one thing or another that led to a 1-run loss for this team. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they're a World Series contender this year, but if Matt McClain comes back and he's healthy and he's playing like he did in 2023, if Christian Encarnacion Strand is healthy this year and he can show that he was the guy that they traded for, if Hunter Green can improve, sneaky good pitching staff. I like to pick up a Brady Singer as well. I think that bullpen is very, very underrated. They got Taylor from the Giants for absolutely nothing, which was just a great move by GM Nick Kroll. So they've made a lot of nice moves. Austin Hayes could be a nice bounce back candidate this year. They could contend in the NL Central for sure, but I think it's all going to hinge on Elly de la Cruz and his development and maturity this year. And I think Terry Francona is going to help a lot with that.
Yeah, and I wonder too, because you know how it is with baseball. You get around that 80, 100 game mark. You get to those dog days of summer and like, all right, who's going to continue pushing on? Who's going to possibly make that deal to make their team better? And who's just kind of wither away and just be a team that's like, all right, we'll look for next year. So, yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for them. I'm always looking for that team in any sport. Like, who's going to take that leap? And I think Cincinnati is certainly on that short list in Major League Baseball that can do some damage in the Central, because as much as we look at teams in the past, this isn't the same Central where the Cardinals were good for so many years. And it was like, all right, you're playing for second, or the Cubs were so good. I mean, Milwaukee's a good team. Don't get me wrong, but I don't look at them as a, 105 win team. Like, I think the Central is one of those divisions where you look at in baseball, and you would know better than me, but it's just like, you get off to a good start and you stay in there. I think the Reds have a good chance. Is there any other team? Am I missing anybody there in the Central that we're worried about necessarily? I don't look at the Pirates in that aspect.
No, I don't think the Pirates are quite there yet. The Cubs could be sneaky good this year. Milwaukee might fall off a little bit, but I said that exact same thing last year, and then they still went out and won. So and that was one of those things like where they lose Craig Counsell, right? They lose their manager, and they still win, right? It didn't matter. They still found a way to win the division. So it's going to be close. I expect this to be one of the more down to earth divisions. I think it's only going to be a one playoff team division this year. I think you're going to get a lot of teams out of the West. Obviously, they're going to fill up and win some games here, but I think it's wide open right now between, I would say, probably the Cubs and the Brewers. And then again, there's just a lot of ifs still with the Reds, but they have the talent, the raw talent there to win the division this year. It's just, can Tito harness that or not?
Speaking of raw talent, let's get into Raw because, obviously me and you, our number one passion is wrestling. Let's start with Monday Night Raw last night. I thought it was a good, solid show all the way around. I tweeted out before I could watch Seth Rollins and Finn Balor wrestle 7 times a week and twice on Mondays. They just, even though I've seen them, there's only a couple of combinations in all of wrestling outside of WWE. I'll put any company in there that you could tell me that those guys are wrestling and I'm not going to go again. Right. Those are 2 guys because they tell a different story every single time. There was one thing, Finn ran outside the ring last night and he just like shoulder blocked Seth into the thing. And it was like, that's not a wrestling move, but it was just something that was just a heel tactic to just mess with them a little bit. And it's just, that's the way that he tells a story is just fantastic. What else stood out to you from last night's Monday Night Raw?
I think it's pretty clear they have huge plans for Roxanne Perez. I think she is going to be in a main event scene much quicker than I think maybe some other people are anticipating. The fact that she is immediately coming up and she's like bypassed the mid-card scene like altogether, right? Like, remember when Lyra Valkyria came up, NXT Women's Champion, and she was putting a little bit of a program with Becky Lynch, and then Becky left, and then she kind of like runner up in the Queen of the Ring tournament. And then she was kind of like laying in the weeds there for a little bit. She was working with the party girls for a bit, kind of not being able to get on television. And then once they introduced the mid-card title, it was like, all right, finally we have something for Lyra to do now. She's going to go win the Intercontinental Championship. Great. Good on her. I think Roxanne's bypassing all of that. I think she's coming up. She's immediately in a program with Bayley, one of the 4 horsewomen heading into WrestleMania season. She has already qualified for Elimination Chamber. She just set a record as an NXT superstar for the longest time in a women's Royal Rumble match in 1 hour and 7 minutes and finished second to Charlotte Flair. Great video package for her last night. Yeah, she got a little bit of an assist to beat, Raquel. She's still technically a heel, so I'm not too worried about that.
That's the point.
Worried about that.
That's the point too, right? Because she's a heel, right? But I feel like watching it last night, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it felt like people want to cheer for her. Like it felt like one of those things where it's like, obviously she's going to be more of a babyface in the matchup last night with Raquel because she's a heel. And I know that that's how they're portraying her, as a heel, but it almost felt like in the match last night, people were like, yeah, we kind of respect her because she's a badass. They know her background, getting trained from Booker T. It was almost like and I know she's got the program with Bayley, but sometimes you can hear it in these certain matches where I think they kind of want her to be a babyface.
Yeah, I think they do too. And they know how good she is. She's been around for, she's 23. She's been around for 10 years. Like, she's already got 10 years experience in the ring. Right. She very well may be a female version of Randy Orton, honestly. Somebody who comes in at a very, very young age, maybe sets a record for winning a world title. It would not shock me if she won a world championship this year at age 23 or even 24, which is not unheard of, right? I mean, Rhea Ripley, I think, won one at 24, 25. Tiffany Stratton's only 25, 26, somewhere in that ballpark. So, it's not completely unheard of, but that was one of the things, man. She came into NXT and she's just if you talk to her in person, she's just one of the most likable, down to earth, very pleasant. Can't help but smile around her, like type people, just bubbly and, everything. And that's why that heel run for her in NXT was so important, because it allowed her to tap into that other side of her psyche and show that she can be hated at the same time. But the main roster audience, not used to that yet, right? Because there's only still a fraction of the main roster casual audience that watches NXT on Tuesday night. So maybe they're not as familiar with her. So they see this, lovely, bubbly, talented girl walking in there who's really, really good. And they're like, yeah, we want to cheer her. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get that. But there are going to be people who are going to gravitate to her very, very quickly on the main roster, I think.
Without a doubt. And I want to ask you your thoughts on what the WrestleMania card is going to be like. Obviously, it's going to become a lot more clear when a week from Saturday, the Elimination Chamber gets going there north of the border. I think we have an idea where, obviously with the women, we know where Jay and Gunther are going to be at. But how do you see kind of the Rhea's opponent shaking out and then Cody's opponent shaking out as of now, if you had to make a prediction?
Well, I mean, you look at the Elimination Chamber matches that are now set after last night. I mean, the guys' match is absolutely stacked.
It
from
is.
top to bottom. John Cena, his last Elimination Chamber ever, CM Punk, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre, Logan Paul, and somebody else I'm forgetting. But still, it's Seth Rollins, right? So
Seth Rollins,
yeah, it's absolutely insane. That said, John Cena's winning. Like it's happening. It's going to be John Cena. It's going to be Cody Rhodes. He's going to be going for his 17th world title in the main event of WrestleMania. I think you could write that down in pen. The interesting thing to me is going to be what kind of John Cena is going to be going after his 17th world title, because to me, that that Royal Rumble press conference with John Cena, where he didn't take any questions and he just issued a statement that said, I'm what's best for business right now. I'm going to WrestleMania. I'm going to Elimination Chamber because I've earned it, and I'm going to get into a WrestleMania and win my 17th world title because I'm what's best for business. That is the closest that he has ever been to sounding like a heel since he was the doctor of thugonomics. Right. I would not be surprised if they go completely balls to the wall with this insane idea of running a heel John Cena that we've never seen during his final run here heading into WrestleMania, especially against Cody, who is the guy right now. He is the guy right now. So that's the interesting part to me. The rest of the card, I think Seth, Roman, Punk, triple threat. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. I genuinely don't know who's winning the women's matchup at Elimination Chamber. I just don't. I don't think Alexa is going to win because they put her on SmackDown. So why would they immediately hotshot her back over to Raw to face Rhea Ripley? I don't think Bayley's winning because she's working with Roxanne. So that makes me think that Roxanne's not winning either. Mm-hmm. But then I look at Bianca and Naomi and I'm like, okay, well, they're the tag team champs. They're in a program right now with Liv and Raquel. They're also waiting for Jade Cargill to come back. So at some point you would think some combination of those five are going to win. So I'm looking at it. I have no idea. I'm going to be genuinely shocked. I know there have been reports that Bianca's coming out of that, but I just feel like there's so much red tape there to clear up. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Maybe it's possible. That one of those six women ends up not being the one who, maybe we get an Edge Kofi Kingston type situation, and maybe we get somebody coming from out of the shadows to work their way into that matchup. So I don't know. I don't see a clear front runner out of that Elimination Chamber matchup. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I have a feeling we're going to see that too. I think something happens in this match. I think maybe Io is a factor. I think maybe Becky Lynch is a factor, something like that, where somebody that we haven't really talked about, because you're right, it seems like everybody's going to pair off. And I think however they unveil the Jade Cargill storyline is going to play a part in that too. Because I think you have so many women, and then you have the tag champs in the Elimination Chamber. Like, you're not just going to have them in there because you have other options, right? So I'm with you. I don't think that's so cut and dry. I do think that John Cena will win the Elimination Chamber, but I've been going on this side kind of against everybody else. I don't think that CM Punk wrestles Rollins and Reigns because his goal is to be in the main event. And that will not be a main event match if it's those three guys.
On night one, it will.
I think
it's Roman Reigns. There's that factor into it. I think that would be a night one.
Over Jey Uso and Gunther?
Yeah. I know they call it. Look, they say you're going to the main event of WrestleMania. Yeah. You don't always. You don't. I mean, if you look, even go, and I know it's under a different era, but if you go back to like 2018 when Asuka and Shinsuke Nakamura won, neither one of them were in the main event of that WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. It's happened a million times before. Heck, the last Women's Royal Rumble winner to even get to the main event was Bianca Belair. So It doesn't always happen. They say it's the main event, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be.
No, for sure. The reason why, and we'll agree to disagree there, because I truly believe that the Yeet movement is the biggest thing when it comes to the fan reaction, and it's tough to have your most popular thing right now not main event. And of course, John Cena and Cody, I think, makes a lot of sense. But that's why I look at CM Punk, and I think somehow, some way, he's going to ask Paul Heyman for that favor. People are saying that he's going to ask Roman. Roman's not the one that gave him the favor. It was Paul Heyman that gave him the favor. I think CM Punk will wrestle with Cody and John Cena as a three-way for the main event, because you don't have to go and worry about people booing Cody, because I think we'll have a similar situation. Kind of what you said with Cena. If they do that, I worry that they'll get into a Hogan Rock thing where you go into it thinking you know who the babyface and the heel is going to be, and then the fans go, no, because there's going to be a lot of people out there that they're going to hate on Cena, but they know it's his last WrestleMania too.
Right, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing because Rock Hogan was one of the most electric atmospheres in WrestleMania history. So
true, but they didn't plan it that way. They didn't plan that going into the match. We are lucky that Hogan and Rock had the wherewithal to go, oh snap, we got to listen to the crowd. I think to prevent that, you go with 3 guys that are polarizing as they come. And now it's not a competition of heel against babyface. It's who's the best. Who is the best in the world, the best right now, or the best of all time, right? So that's where where I'm going with the situation. But listen, I don't think you can go wrong. I know it's going to be awesome.
WWE is in a really great spot right now where they have many organically over, baby faces, so much to the point where you got guys like LA Knight. Like, what the hell is LA Knight going to do at WrestleMania this year? You've got, I'm so mad. Yeah. I'm so genuinely mad I didn't see the Jey Uso win coming a mile away because I should have. I genuinely should have. I remember, being in the press box at Lucas Oil, stuff packed up, getting ready to bolt down to the press conference, and I'm standing next to my colleague, Zach Haydorn, and I'm just sitting there. I'm watching these 2 guys going at each other, and I just looked over, and I was like, this is a really nice spot for Jey. This is a really nice rub for all the work that he's done to be, one of the last 2 standing before Cena wins the Royal Rumble here. And then literally Jey shoves him off the apron, and I'm like, what? But the more I thought about it, I'm like, I should have seen that coming a mile away. It was a total sleight of hand with all those names that they put in there. But it was and a great rub for Jey Uso to be the one to walk away from it.
That's why we gotta love it, man. That's why we love it so much. And we'll definitely have you on before WrestleMania to talk about it all. It's our guy Rick Ucchino, Sports Illustrated, Fightful, Reds Talk, Bengals on Sirius, Cincinnati Radio up there, iHeart and ESPN. Rick, great catching up with you, my brother. Be well and enjoy the wrestling the rest of this week, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate you.
You got it, pal.